It's October 26, 2016, and we're back with our podcast. John, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Great to be here with you.
You know, there's a lot of crappy stories in the news. You know this. We read a ton of these stories. But there was one you tweeted out yesterday, this pilot, Bob Hoover, 94, aerobatic stunts thrilled the world. He just passed away.
Yeah, well, how about this? So not only was the guy a great pilot, which a lot of pilots think he may have been one of the greatest pilots to ever live, but he flew 59 missions in World War II. Then he spent 16 months in prisoner of war camp after he was shot down after his 59th mission. And most of that time, apparently, he was in solitary confinement because he tried to escape 16 different times, Andrew. But he finally succeeded, and he actually did escape, and he flew out of the German prison.
I know. And I thought about that for a second. It's like two things. One, you take the German plane and you're flying towards, I guess it was Holland, I think he landed. Or maybe, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it's like, hi, I'm coming in. I'm not German. Don't shoot me down. But I guess times are different then. And then the other question was, what happened to the plane once he landed? Like, hey, can you hold on to this for like after the war? I want to keep it and come back and get it. I guess they weren't thinking about things like that. But great story. And apparently you knew Chuck Yeager. He was friends with him.
Yeah, good friends with Chuck Yeager. I think Yeager's the one that might have called him the greatest pilot of all time.
It's pretty big shoes to fill. And then he also, Jimmy Doolittle, Doolittle's Raid. Just amazing. 94 years old. Anyway.
Yeah, his plane is in the Smithsonian, Andrew. So I mean, you know, this is not just a guy who's had a spectacular life as a military pilot and then as a civilian pilot, entertaining and, you know, barnstorming, all that kind of stuff. This is a guy that just is a legend. So it's amazing.
Oh, speaking of legends, I was thinking about this morning. You were done with that the Nike book. Did you read the Wright brothers book?
I did.
Okay.
Loved them both.
Okay, so loved them both. I was going to say that's another one because that ties right into this whole pilot thing, which is kind of cool.
True.
Okay.
And we could tie it into Under Armour with the Nike book that you just brought up.
There's one that interview you did with him today on Fast Money. He said there's no real plan, there's no real book. And I was like, wait a second, there is. I didn't want to say that.
Well, true. And, you know, as it turns out, Phil Knight did a great job, of course. And as many of you who listen to the podcast regularly know, I think it's one of the best books of the year, the Phil Knight book, Shoe Dog. I asked Plank if he'd read it, and Kevin Plank, CEO of Under Armour, said, no, I haven't.
Oh.
However, a couple of his assistants said, yes, of course we have. But I don't really blame him for not reading it, Andrew, because it's not really a roadmap for another entrepreneur to do what Mr. Knight, Phil Knight, CEO and co-founder of Nike, was able to do, because a lot of his was just on the edge. Plank does do on the edge pretty well already. And it's a question of, you know, David versus Goliath now. I mean, you know, he's moving into a space where you've got Adidas and Puma and Nike, you know, he has done really well in the athletic clothing, but he hasn't really broken through in the shoe market in a big way yet. But that's a matter of time, I think. I believe he will. I bought the stock today, by the way.
Oh, you did? And it's trading at 32.
I bought calls, actually. I bought the January 3250 calls. This is exactly what I did. And I sold the November 33s. Now, many of you might say, well, why would you do that? Number one, I cut my risk dramatically by doing that. I paid $1.65 for the Jan 3250s. I sold the November 33s for 60 cents. So I have $1 on the table. if the stock sits there a while, even if it goes down to 30, I'm thinking that my Jan 3250s are still worth $1. I'm discounting the Novembers at that point.
Okay,
of
so
course,
you did a calendar spread.
Yeah, but a diagonal calendar. So I bought the 3250s and I sold the 33s
in November.
So I do have $0.50 of upside, even if the thing, were to just run like a scalded dog right here. I'd still have some upside in the trade, but I'm more or less playing for this thing to consolidate after the sell-off it's had. And if it does that, it wears out all the premium in those November calls. Meanwhile, January, I got a lot more time. I got 2 whole months, 60 days more to hold those calls, and hopefully I get to write several times against those calls.
You do.
So that's
I
my
see
plan.
you do that trade a lot. I'm very familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you're up in New York, and you're doing K-Day.
Yeah, K-Day is for every 1,000 shares or more that are executed in that block, 1,000 shares or more, we're going to get a donation to support ALS research for finding a cure. It's called Wings Over Wall Street. It's muscular dystrophy and ALS research. And we've already, before the thing even starts, we've got a lot of money raised. And then we have a big charity event in New York tomorrow. We even have a dinner, Andrew, that people can bid on a dinner with Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. 3 people get to go out to dinner with Kevin. So if I were 3 smart people, young or old, I would say they should bid for that dinner with Kevin. You imagine getting 2 hours with Kevin where you can basically enjoy food and drink with him and pitch him an idea that maybe he'll fund.
Oh, Shark Tank? You mean Shark Tank, Kevin?
Pretty valuable time. Yeah, that Kevin O'Leary, exactly.
And what do you have to do to get to...
You just go to a site called Bidding for Good, and they've got it's up there live. They've got this auction for Kevin O'Leary. I got him to donate. He said, John, I never do this. But for you, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I'm patting Kevin on the back, but he said, for you, I'll do it. And so I asked him if he would give a night out of his life for a good cause, and he was a gentleman and agreed to do it. So God bless him.
I'm not saying you'd get more out of that dinner than you would out of Warren Buffett, but I just did.
Yeah, I would say that. I would absolutely say that.
And that's just lunch. And Warren Buffett's like, here, have a root beer. have a root beer float. And it's like, no, give me a glass of wine.
And a Dairy Queen, kid.
Cheap bastard.
Geez, I just paid you $1 million for this. Yeah, you're kind of dumb, but
here's a cherry Coke and a hot dog from Dairy Queen for lunch. And they spend a lot on Warren Buffett's lunch. I think it's lunch with him. And they people spend up to $500,000 for stuff like that.
They spend a lot of money on those lunches. This would be a better time. You'd enjoy good wine. It's going to be at Ocean Prime, which is a wonderful New York City restaurant. And you get a couple hours of Kevin's time and, like I say, a great meal. How can you beat it? You got a good idea? Go bid for it.
You know what I love about
it's a great thing.
The IEX thing that you're hooking up is because that's another book we read was the
Flash
Boys, Michael Lewis, and they had all those characters in Brad Katsuyama, is it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And he'll be there. Now, I want to know, there's one of the character of the book, the Irish dude, that was like
Ronan.
Yeah, he was like an MCI guy. They were selling telephones out of their trucks, out of their cars,
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh no, that signal goes up through the Bronx and the Queens, and it takes an extra 4 seconds to get over to New Jersey. You don't want to route it that way. You got to route it this way." I like these guys that they were technical in what they did, but they unlocked the secret and they had all the maps for all the I thought that guy was great. Is he going to be there?
Brad will be there, Ronan will be there, and John Schwal. All 3 guys are in the book. They're all going to be there at Chelsea Pier in New York tomorrow for this charity, Wings Over Wall Street, it's called. It's going to be great.
All right, so now let's go through some picks that you got here.
All right.
Boeing,
morning. Very interesting action in this stock today, Andrew. Came out with good results. Stock immediately shot up to like 144. Then it crashes back down to 136, and now it's right back to 144. I mean, if you pull this thing up, you won't even believe that it did this, folks. But that is the biggest V-shaped recovery that I've seen out of a stock in a single session in a long time, Andrew. I mean, literally, folks, pre-market it was 144. First half hour of trade, it crashes down to 136, and now it's right back to 145, basically.
Yeah, 144.60. And then the other one, everybody's got an opinion on, just buy it and hold it, is Apple. What do you think?
I like Apple. But, you know, what we did yesterday for clients is stock was, let's say, 118. And we'd been long and strong the stock. For anybody who had a non-taxable account. So in other words, if you had a Roth or an IRA or anything that was non-taxable, we said, let's take the stock off. So we did for our clients at Nigerian Family Office. Took the stock off at 118 and said, let's put them in the January 120, 130 call spread for like $2.70. Why? Because now we just turned $118,000 investment, if you had 1,000 shares, into something that's basically a $2,700 investment that can go to 10 grand. Because difference between the two strike prices is $10, 120 and 130. You paid $2.70 for it, so 10 times that's $2,700, but it could go to 10,000. I like that, and we pulled all that other money off the table. And if it did actually have a bad report, it wasn't a bad report, but the stock's down $3 or $4 today. If it was a horrible report and the stock cracked $15 or so, you don't want to be holding that stock. You'd rather be in that call spread if you still want the upside. And now people have taken the profit in the stock, and it's down basically more than we paid for the spread. And I like our odds in trades like that.
And then there's other thing I want to mention to you after this one, but FedEx going. Oh
yeah, like FedEx,
Christmas time?
Strong upside call activity. Yep, I think it's a bet on a good holiday shopping season, and FedEx handling a lot of those deliveries. So FDX call spreads in here today.
Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to mention was I called you from the floor earlier after I got done doing the VIX report today, and we got cut off, and you actually read my mind that they're buying 21 and 20 calls on the VIX, but they're not buying them on that election contract. They're buying them like the November, the week after. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, I'm going to full on say this, while nobody else is, that I think the election gets contested. It goes down to, we're not going to know before we go to bed. Whether Hillary wins or not, that's another story. I'm not going to get on that side of the argument. I'm just going to say one or two of these states gets called or contested, and that makes the VIX shoot up the next morning, or at least for another day or two. I don't know.
It very well could. I liked the way you were, as soon as you told me what you saw, I thought that there was a possibility that the people that were buying that are buying a very low-risk trade that could pay off huge if there is a contested result. And if there is, man, that would be, some protection you'd really want, because that will interject a whole bunch of volatility into the market pretty darn fast.
Well, it kind of, and I don't want to talk my book, but it reminded me of Brexit. And we had that. Mm-hmm. We had those calls on the VIX going into Brexit, and it kind of felt like that. We're talking 500,000, 50-cent cheapies, and everybody's kind of lackadaisical about this whole thing, and like, forget winning or losing. Let's just say it's contested or we don't know. I mean, an hour of that is 5 points on the VIX. One morning of it. One.
And especially because Mr. Trump, if let's say he's the one contesting it, is not a quitter.
No.
I mean, that he would be one of those guys that is going to say, you know, whatever, precedent be damned. I want every freaking vote counted.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting scenario.
Now,
some cases, yeah.
I could take the other side and say, well, Trump's never said he was going to sue anybody. That's like his middle name.
Yeah.
I'll sue him. I mean, which is kind of annoying. I mean, when you think about it, it's one of the few things that annoy me about him. But he will. He'll say that's not right, and he'll call it like it is, and you know, send out the lawyers. So, anyway, that's just that on that. Anyway, nothing else there.
All right.
Well, that's it.
You want to do one more stock? Chipotle, CMG.
You like
the only reason I bring it up, I know we're running out of time, but just bring it up. We broke through some pretty key support at basically the 390 level, Andrew. And so watch this one, folks. I'm not claiming to be a technician. I'm just saying when you look at this one on the charts, when we broke through 390, this was like a double bottom, and we went through it like a hot knife through butter, just opened under it, and now it's trading 366. It's down almost $40, so it might get to that blow off tomorrow, but we'll see. This is an ugly result though for Chipotle.
Why don't they split this thing? That's what they need to do. Then more people can play it, so to say. Like Apple.
Well, they probably tried to make it tougher on the Bears, but that's probably why they hadn't split it so far. But the Bears are feasting on it, and this is one stock that just needs time to pass. I can't think of anything but time going by that'll save them.
All right, I'll let you go.
All right, sir.
All right.
I hope you have a great one, Andrew. Remember, folks, subscribe to the podcast on Apple, iTunes, or over subscribe on YouTube. Either one.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.